before we even go further into like sexual energy, magnetism through sacred sexuality and all good things, I want to know more about you, more than just the bio. Like you, before recording, we were talking about your journey when you were a kid and how you made the switch from that like kind of Western medicine world to more towards like bodily things and Eastern medicine world. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so I was in the past, I was doing my master's in pharmacology and very much in the Western medicine framework. And during that time, there was two major things that came through that evoked this inspiration to dive deeper into holistic and integrated health. And the first thing that came up was my own experience. So, long story short, just like a summarized version, my mom was sick when I was growing up, and I pretty much grew up in a hospital. So, that was the seed of inspiration of wanting to pursue medicine. But it also, in that experience, I developed very severe anxiety. And being in the hospital and being around everyone that was sick, it planted this seed in my mind and in my subconscious that I was going to be sick next. And I was going to have these health imbalances. And the mind and subconscious is so powerful that then I became sick. And I was in and out of the hospital and test after test and all these different diagnoses. And they wanted to put me on a myriad of medications. And at this time, I was between like 10 and 12 years old, that all this was really happening. And my parents said, like, no, she's so young. Like, I don't want to put her on all these medications. She needs to learn how to like deal with these emotions that are coming through and the anxiety. So fast forward, I spent many years just emotionally shutting down because I didn't have the tools to regulate my emotions, to regulate my nervous system, and embrace the side of me. It's my hypersensitivity. It's actually my gift, but it was unregulated when I was young. So when I was studying medicine, my anxiety came back full on because I was working a crazy schedule, really intense environment. I was running all these experiments and I was having multiple panic attacks a week. Yeah, it was.
That's scary. Multiple panic attacks a week. I've had like one in my whole life, and that was awful. So I cannot imagine someone that has to go through that. And I mean, I was looking at statistics earlier about anxiety in general. Um, almost everyone experiences anxiety at some point in their lives, but like 1 in 10 people feel like they have chronic anxiety, whether or not it's diagnosed. That's crazy, right? Like
Yeah,
we're now so anxious.
because we're so stimulated and we're living in such a go, go, go world with so much pressure. And any type of rest and relaxation and rejuvenation is seen as lazy. And our worth is associated with our productivity and our accomplishment. So we silence how we're truly feeling. And like we can even go deep into the conversation of like menstrual cycles and like women not even honoring the day of their bleed, which like we're losing so much energy, so much life force. Like we should all be taking that time to rest, and we just muscle forward and we push through. And this creates so many imbalances within our health, which isn't talked about from the modern medicine framework. So when I was experiencing this within myself, at the time I was in and out of the hospital again because I was having these panic attacks and I thought I was dying. And the doctor diagnosed me with early onset MS, and I was 23 years old. Yeah, which like you don't tell a hypochondriac they have
Oh,
early onset
wow. Like,
MS.
take all this medicine.
Yeah. And the identities and the labels of like, oh, I'm gonna have all of these problems and these imbalances. And I didn't allow that to really sink in. And I took radical responsibility. As soon as I finished my master's, I was like, first off, like I need to get my system and my nervous system regulated and figure out how to harmonize that within myself. Otherwise, this is going to be a lifelong problem, and I am going to be really sick if I don't get this under control. And the other piece was actually working in the clinics. I just saw the gaps between the emotional intelligence and not actually addressing the root problem. So yes, we were helping patients, but because we weren't addressing the root, they would be back. So I just had this desire and this pull to dive deeper in. And I was like, there's got to be more. And it's not to discredit the modern system. I think it's really powerful, but it's fragmented. And the natural medicine, especially when working symbiotically with the modern research and the modern context, it creates more of this holistic and integrated approach and seeing the body as a unique whole. So that's a little bit of my journey that brought me into natural healing modalities. And now I'm like such an advocate for optimizing your energy and balancing your health, and also like cycle work primarily for women.
Wow. So what would be a few things that you do to optimize your energy from this the other medicine perspective?
So many things.
Yeah, I
I
know. I
think,
know that one of the things that you do is definitely movement, right? Like
yeah.
I see you do like dancing a lot, and I don't remember which who said this quote, but someone said dancing is the shortcut to happiness.
Aww.
That is so cute. But yeah, I see you do a lot of like big movements. Is that a part of your wellness journey?
Absolutely. Movement is huge because for look at it like from I study Chinese medicine. So you have meridians or channels that the energy or chi flows in. And the optimal is when the channels are open and the chi is clear and flows with ease. That's when we're like optimal health. When we start to have problems, it's when the chi becomes muddy or turbid, or the chi begins to stagnate. So if we're not moving, that chi will begin to stagnate. And then we'll see this in our emotions, we'll see this in our ambitions, in our energy levels, and in our overall health. So the subtle then becomes a physical manifestation of imbalance. So movement is a non-negotiable for me. And breath is another really powerful tool that I tap into every day. And not just, of course, for breathing all the time, but conscious breath and really tapping into harmonizing the nervous system by activating the parasympathetic, which is slowing the body down. That's where we rest and rejuvenate. And if you're not slowing your body down, that's why you don't have as much energy, because you're burning so much fuel without replenishing it. And we're aging rapidly
Yeah.
because of this.
What do you
So
say to
fountain of youth
people
is in
who,
rest.
yeah, what do you say to people who say things like, I work really hard, like I hustle all the time. I have no time to rest. I have kids. I work all day. I come home, I cook, I take care of my kids, and then I have to go to bed. Like, what do you advise them to do?
Right. So this is the modern day framework and the context, right? So it's how can we practically biohack our nervous system to bring us into parasympathetic? And it can be simple practices. You don't have to be a monk in the Himalayas meditating to access peace. So a big tool that I use is sound, because sound activates the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is the switch for the nervous system. So you can either be in sympathetic, which is that doing, going, la, 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 all the time, or you have the parasympathetic, which is where you're repairing, rejuvenating, resting, recovering. So using the vagus nerve, using sound to drop us into parasympathetic is going to increase our energy, increase our mental clarity. A lot of people that are always doing and going struggle with memory, brain fog, anxiety, up and down with depression, lack of sleep. So when we start to activate parasympathetic, which breath, sound, and even something as simple as laughing will activate this system. Yeah.
I love that. I laugh every day, so I hope that's good for my body and rejuvenation.
Absolutely.
uh so okay, the sound that you're talking about, is it like something that people can just seek out on like Spotify, or is
So
it, yeah.
yeah, there's a couple different things you can play with sound. I really I really advocate for making the sound because we can
Oh,
listen
okay. So it's
to
making the sound rather than just passively listening.
that is powerful too. Listening to healing frequencies, grounding frequencies, calming music is also going to bring you into a calm state for sure. But actively making the noise, oming, singing a song that you love that like brings you so much joy and peace, mantra work, even just humming. Like I always find myself throughout the day, like I'm always just like, in my responses. If someone's talking like, and it's become this habit that I am constantly using these vibrations to soothe my nervous system, to drop me into my body. And the impacts are profound. Like I would not even say that I suffer from anxiety anymore.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's my response. I'm gonna
Mm.
be trying that more and more. I'm gonna adopt it. So since this is a sexual wellness podcast, I really am interested in the work that you do and how it's related to sexual wellness. And you talk
Mm.
about sexual life force. Um, what is sexual life force, and why sexual life force cultivation is important? And then how
Mhm.
people can start.
Before we dive into that, I also just want to like segue with what we were just talking about, like in terms of sexuality and sacred sexuality, of like your throat has the same structure as like your pelvic space. So this is such a connected channel, the throat and the sacral. So even like when we're experiencing pleasure, it's like through like moaning, and the more that we moan, like the more that we open up, and the more that it becomes this symbiotic relationship, because it's dropping us deeper into our body. So sound is such a beautiful pathway of opening yourself up more, tapping into like that space of surrender, so you can really feel pleasure and really tap into allowing your life force and your sensuality and your sexuality to be expressed and to be free.
I am loving everything that you're doing and saying right now. Wow. Wow. That's powerful.
Mm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yes, baby.
Wow, beautiful. Okay, so wow. So okay, I do this type of like class sometimes where it's about just cultivating pleasure in the body, and one of the exercises is to moan. And people often ask me, well, I'm not having sex, so like, how can I just moan? I said, you can moan for anything. You can literally have a good bite of food and moan. You
Mm-hmm.
can smell really beautiful flowers and moan. So moaning, even though it's so attached to like having sex, I think you can moan from anything. And moaning, I feel for me, is such an expressive way of showing myself and people around me of pleasure, ways of pleasure. And the fact that you said that it's attached to your sacral space and how much it's related to that, sexual well-being, you're preaching to the choir. I'm now loving it even more. So now I can use this knowledge I just learned from you to my students. I can say like, this is what Simona said, how it is related to your sacral chakra.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's also coming into this space of like liberation, because I find so much of our sexual expression has been contained, distorted. And it's either that we're having a hard time to express ourselves and just being and tapping into that space, or there's like this performative aspect of you're not really feeling it, but then you're like doing what you think you should be doing. And
Like
you're,
porn.
yeah.
Like in porn, I can't imagine, like, in porn, there's no foreplay, there's no movement. It's just like the guy comes in, he opens the door, he rips his shirt off, and he has abs. So like the girl's like, oh my God, fuck me. And then she's immediately wet. Like there's no clitoral touching or stimulation in this scene. Just he's like there and he just rams into her and it's like, oh my God, this is the
Right.
porn I watched growing up. And I'm like, oh, okay. So that's sex. Oh, cool. So like in my all of my early 20s is me performing.
Mm-hmm.
It's me performing so that I feel good about myself and that I can show up for my partner, not really harvesting the pleasure at all. Even I can't even remember if I ever had like sexual pleasure in my early 20s because I was just performing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
So
this is part of the problem and the disconnect with porn is this like hyper sexualization and this it's like this like rushing culture and it's like so fast versus dropping in. And I feel like this is now a segue like into your first question of like what is life force cultivation, because it's reframing and reprogramming sex as life force. So our sexual energy, our sex energy is creation energy. So we can see this in making a baby for sure. This is like a very um like tangible
yeah,
and like physiological. That's what we do, right? We create
right.
life through sex. But if we sink in deeper to the energetics, it's the same thing. It's creation energy itself. So when you start to see your sex energy as your creation energy, you start to bring that life force into your business, into your relationships, and all that you're creating in your life versus like it's only reserved for sex. And that's the only time that I tap into it is like when I'm expressing myself in that way versus like I am an expression of life force and every day I'm playing with sex energy. Every day I'm playing with pleasure and igniting this side of myself. So it's a reframing.
Wow. Okay. So if, sexual life force and that like energy is something that's pretty solid, that's in everyone, and that we can all learn to cultivate it to have, better well-being, in
Mm-hmm.
that sense. Um, why do you think it's important to cultivate the life force and how can someone start?
Right. Okay. So a big piece of this is going back to the rest and the rejuvenation. And I'm going to bring this into yin and yang, which is water and fire, feminine and masculine. So, water, the water principle, the feminine, births all life, births all things. So, the feminine births the masculine, and then they work in this symbiotic relationship. They cannot exist without one another. And the magic happens when you find the sweet spot between the two forces. This is like your flow state, your being, your non-doing. It just is like it's ecstasy, it's magic, it's perfect harmony. So the water principle, the feminine, is our essence. So we're born with so much essence, and then our lifestyle cultivates the essence. So
Okay.
your food, your water, and your breath is like the basics, but then also looking in terms of all aspects of life. Is it nourishing your yin? Is it building your yin, or is it draining it? Your relationships, your career, is it building these reserves, or is it depleting it? Now, most of us are living in hyper fire, always doing, always going, not resting. So the thing is we're burning our fire, and the fire is drinking up all of the essence, and we're not replenishing it. So when we're young, we can get away with it. But as we begin to age, this is when we really start to see the ramifications of not nourishing the yin and balancing and empowering the fire. So the ancients did all of this cultivation within the yin, within the waters, so they would have more power, more vitality, more radiance. And their goal was immortality, which is this longevity, a long, vibrant life. And this begins in the water cultivation. So this is where, yeah, those sacral waters, slowing down, going into nature, and really building these reserves.
So going into the what you just explained, if I was someone who is in this go modern society, let's say, let's say I'm a lawyer and all day I'm just arguing, prepping documents, and then I come home, I eat my food, drink a glass of wine, watch some TV, and go to sleep. And then I go on a loop like this every day. And I know millions of people are in this loop. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what is the simplest way to start? Right? Like someone like that who has maybe never
Mm-hmm.
even thought about meditation
Mm-hmm.
or breath work, or like, where do you think
Mm-hmm.
is the simplest way for someone to step into this life force cultivation journey?
Mm-hmm. The the most accessible is like spending some time in nature every day. Um, Even if it's just like maybe like walking outside instead of taking, if it's like accessible, instead of like taking your car on your break, going and putting your feet in the grass. Like nature is bringing us back into balance constantly, and it's also helping to remove um, toxins and radiation, like all of the EMF that we receive from working on our computers and always connected to Wi-Fi that actually is not the best for our bodies. So the more we can commune with nature, whatever that looks like, the better. And the second piece is like finding a practice that brings you enjoyment. Because if you're so focused and disciplined throughout your life, and then you got to add in another practice that is like, oh, it feels like an obligation, like that takes the fun out of it and the purpose out of it. It's supposed to be something that just brings you into presence. Like think of when you were a child and what you like to do. Did you like to play music? Did you like to draw? Did you like to dance? Whatever it is, and then developing a bit of a practice around that.
Great. I think those are really good, simple practices that people can start trying like today, right? So if you
Mm-hmm.
have even a 30-minute after dinner to, instead of watch an episode of TV, maybe try a couple times a week, walk outside and enjoy the trees around you. If you live in like city dwellings like me, I live right in the middle of downtown LA. I try to once a week drive to the beach or hiking, so that I am in nature, because I so need it. I know that I do, because after nature I feel so good.
Yeah,
So yeah, so
it
exactly what you
recharges the
said.
battery.
It really, like, nature is so smart. I went to an herbalism class the other day, and the teacher was saying, nature is so smart, but then humans find these plants and they break them apart, and then now they're dangerous. But like, if you had consumed the whole plant, the nature, like the plant created its own really really smart system where, yes, like one ingredient by itself is dangerous. However, if you take it as a whole, there is this other protective mechanism in it already, which is like
Right.
something I never thought about. Never thought about. There was like I think a willow bark or something where like if you extract a part of it, it's very dangerous. But if you take it together, I don't know. It's just gives me appreciation for plants and nature and all of that.
So wise. So wise. Another drop that's coming through too is um like before bed, if you can like get off the screens or the TV, and like the bright lights, because that really messes with our circadian rhythm and our quality of sleep. So you could also put like a slowing down practice right before bed, that half an hour that it's like I turn all the devices off. I put my phone onto airplane mode so I'm not getting that signal while I'm sleeping, and that's disrupting my healing. And having a little bit of a bedtime practice is a good way to start.
Oh, what's your bedtime practice?
I love having tea at nighttime.
Is it like decaf tea?
Yeah, I
Like
usually
herbal
have
tea?
like, yeah, I'll have like a chamomile. So it's like a sleepy tea. And yeah, it's just slowing things down. And I've been bringing tea into just, I see tea as like a meditative practice of like slowing down, brewing it, being very intentional with it. And I do it throughout the day as well. Like I'll have like a daytime tea, and it's just opportunities to just to pause and reflect and slow down a little bit, because it's so easy to get caught up in like our day-to-day tasks and, oh, I have so much I want to get done, or I have this list.
Oh,
And yeah.
I'm there with you. My calendar is so full. I do meditate every day, even for 5 minutes, and that is such a necessity for me now. Like I
Mhm.
cannot just not meditate. I would say if I don't meditate for a day, in which I don't remember how that feels now because I've meditated every day for over 2 years. But if I feel like if I don't, I would feel very tight. Uh,
Mm,
how I feel in relations to others, I feel it reflects in my body. So my neck and my
mm,
shoulders will be really tight when I interact with, let's say, my boss or like someone who is like really intense. And I feel it in my body. So that meditation, even for 5 minutes, it's very important for me, like necessary.
absolutely. And it's the like with this like coming back to like just life force cultivation, because meditation is also building that life force. um it's more powerful to do short intervals and to be committed every day, because the long term effects are from compounded consistency. So the more that we're regularly exercising this muscle, the more that it's building up this energy and this capacity. So it's better to do 5 minutes every day than to do an hour once every 2 weeks.
Oh, interesting. I like this. I subscribe to this thought. I like this school of thought because, like, sometimes I will go to a yoga class and someone say, "Oh yeah, I meditate every day for like 45 minutes to 60 minutes." I'm like, I don't even know how to do that.
Right, right. Yeah, it's like as long as you're showing up a little bit every day, that's what's important. And like also like compassion for self, because we're living in very modernized worlds. You know, it's a different life or capacity if like that's your life's work, or that's your main fuel of purpose, is to meditate and is to be in these states. But for the average modernized person, that's not a realistic reality. So it's like, how can we bring these aspects to harmonize and then optimize our lives so we can be of better service in our relationships and our jobs? And yeah, compassionate heart too versus like
Yeah.
a critical heart. Yeah.
I'm trying on that compassionate heart. That's for sure. The one thing that you talk about is magnetism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Magnetism. Um, what is magnetism?
So this is the feminine waters. So when you really start to cultivate this potency in your womb space, you start to then magnetize both sides of the spectrum, and this is where discernment's really important, because as your life force becomes really potent, it's almost like you become like shiny, it's like you become felt, and your presence is really felt. So you will also attract some denser energies, entities, and you'll also attract like that at which you're calling in. So then you have to get clear as to like, what am I going to allow into my field? What resonates? What's aligned? And flow with that. Or like having that discernment of, no, this isn't what I'm calling in. This isn't aligned for what I've seeded my intention. And I'm going to put that boundary and I'm going to honor my no. So the more that we become discerned and really seeing our energy, our time, especially our sacred waters, our sexual waters as our highest currency, then we really start to magnetize more and more opportunities, powers, relationships, whatever it is that we're calling in. So it's this dance of like cultivating, embodying, and then discerning.
Wow. Okay. I'm I'm uh I'm learning so much from this, and I find it quite similar to the idea of like manifesting and like self-fulfilling prophecy. Is it related to that?
Yeah, so manifestation and magnetism go hand in hand, because sometimes, and everything, again, it's this dance of yin and yang. It's this dance of feminine and masculine. So with manifesting is like you manifest that at which you are. So if you're building this frequency, then you're going to magnetize into your reality these different opportunities, which is your manifestation. But with that being said, with manifestation, it's also taking the aligned action. So there's a fine balance of surrendering and receiving, but also putting in that aligned action, because we can't just expect to always be in a state of receiving if we're not in that
Right.
masculine action. So, but sometimes where we get caught is we're actioning, and we're not actually listening and adjusting. So you can action all of these things, yet it's not really working for you, and you're not really getting the results that you desire. And that's because the subtleties may be off, or the intention may be off, or the actual root of the frequency. Like maybe you're actioning, but it's coming from a scarcity mindset, and it's coming from energetic scarcity. So it's like you're actually putting that out into the universe, into the energetics, versus I'm coming from an abundance and full and overflowing, and I'm putting in the aligned action. And that's where the magic of manifestation happens. So it's playing in both of these spaces, the subtleties as well as like we're living a human experience. So we also do have to work with the material plane in order to make it happen. So, and then you said manifestation, and the other one was,
Self-fulfilling prophecy. So like if you show up somewhere and you are showing up with this like kind of down energy, very tense, very much like I like you said, like the masculine, like the go go go, and you're just saying like, well, this is not gonna work. Then I feel like you're magnetizing the fact that it's not gonna work,
mm-hmm,
versus being magnetic could mean like, first thinking it will work, and then putting in the action to make it work, right? And then the success of whatever you aim to do comes. Maybe you want to rest, instead of saying, ah, I can't rest, I'm not someone like that. Maybe just say, hey, I think I'm good at resting, I'm going to do that today.
Right.
And see what happens, right? And then try to rest and see what happens. What
Right.
you've been talking about, I want to apply it to a sexual context, and I want to see what you think. Let's
Mhm.
say, a woman comes to you and she goes, I haven't had any sexual desire for a long time. I'm not, tapped into my femininity or sexuality. I haven't wanted sex in a long time, and it's a problem between me and my husband. Uh, how would you advise her based on what you study and your work?
Right. So, where I would begin is with acceptance, because often the most criticism and then resistance comes from when we're trying to control something. And if we're feeling discomfort, it's like usually then we move even more into these waves of control. So I would invite to like, okay, like feeling into like that it's okay that you're not feeling the desire. Like first let's like just kind of accept that within your body, within your emotions, within your being, because then you begin to soften. And when you begin to soften, then you can get past this like death grip hold. And when we begin to soften, then we can begin to tap into the subtleties. And as we begin to explore the subtleties, then you'll start to listen and hear the why. And from there, like those subtle messages then give us the opportunity for adjustment and for cultivation. So maybe with this person, it's like they don't have the desire because they're working all the time and they're tired. So it's like instead of then adding it to another list of the things to do, then it's like, okay, well, where can I cultivate more yin time that's then going to allow me to tap into these parts within myself? Or maybe it's an emotional imbalance within self or within the relationship dynamic that needs to be explored. And empowering that space will then rebring in the connection. And maybe there needs to be a sense of communication and not feeling seen or heard. Like there's so many pathways that your internal intelligence will guide you if you give it the space and the full capacity of like come as you are. Like everything and anything is welcome. And this is also feminine expression. She is wild. She is not contained. She doesn't look like a certain way. She is the roaring sea and the volcano, the budding flower in the still lake. So the more that we allow our nature to just be in its expression and guide us into deeper intelligence, the more that we can proactively support our emotions, our body, and our being.
Wow, the what you just said about like she is the rosebud, but also the still lake, all of that, that should be its own sound bite. I'm gonna make sure that that's the sound bite. It's gonna become viral, definitely. Like it's so good. And listening to that, I'm quite mesmerized because I am, I'm a working woman in this very much masculine and businessy world, and going to teach as a professor, I project a lot of energy. And then
Mhm.
recording the podcast, I am on top of my game. I'm, projecting a lot of energy. So going back to what you said, I think rest is everything. The
Mhm.
rejuvenation part cannot happen without the slowing down time. And
Mhm.
that's a good reminder for myself too, for slowing down and how much that affects every part of life, and particularly what we're talking about today, which is sex. So in a way, rest is very much related to sexual wellness.
And we can also like reframe work too of like fueling up
Mm-hmm.
as
Fueling
like the
up.
rest. Fueling
Yes,
up.
fueling up. So it sounds more productive.
It is the most productive thing you can be doing.
That's gonna be it. That's gonna be a wallpaper on my phone. Rest is the most productive thing you can be doing. That will be a wallpaper on my phone for sure.
It's an art.
It really is, and it's hard. You in your work, you sometimes talk about yoni aches.
Hmm.
Can you talk about what they are and what they're for?
Yeah. So yoni eggs are a tool um, for cultivating life force, sexual energy. It's also a really powerful tool of like strengthening the muscles within our yoni and within this space of the feminine. So it's a tool that's been used for thousands and thousands of years. I'm going to go into a little bit of story time. The emperor was obsessed with immortality, and he had all these different practitioners. He had a cosmologist who would study the oracles of nature and the patterns of nature and the cosmos, and give him direction. Then he would have a practitioner, Chinese medicine, acupuncture, gua sha, all of these different modalities for cultivation. And then he would have a life force sage that would teach him these different practices of retention and circulation and consolidation, because this is our most potent force to work with and embody. And simultaneously, the women would be cultivating with yoni eggs and jade eggs. And then they would come together and do these cultivation practices together, because it's powerful to do these practices within self, but when you're coming together with another person that's cultivating, you create a third entity. And like, yes, this is the child physically, but it's also energetically, you're birthing this combined energy and this combined force. So this is kind of like the origins and the roots. A little disclaimer, like I definitely suggest exploring your body with yourself before using different tools, because it's so important to like develop this relationship with ourselves. Often even within self pleasure, it's like, how many times do we just go like right to the clit and like right to it, versus like really taking the time for self, really listening to what your body's calling for and asking for, and taking time in the subtleties to open up to pleasure versus going right to physical pleasure. So I even suggest this, like if you have a call to work with tools like yoni eggs, is developing a relationship with your yoni and with your body and asking if it wants to work with the egg, versus again like forcing it in and cultivating. I'm like, oh, I need to do my yoni egg practices. It's like listening to your body. Like, what is your body calling? Like, yes, today I want to work with this egg and I want to cultivate this energy and this frequency. Or it's like, you know what, actually I just want to hold the crystal and feel the energy of the crystal, and put my hand on my womb space and just sit with myself and be present with myself. So it's a myriad of practices within the yoni world and within the yoni egg world.
I like that. Good alternatives. So like you don't have to always put it inside your vagina. You can hold it and touch your womb. And then I like the idea of asking your body what she needs. But at the end of the day, I also know that I know a lot of women that are feeling a little afraid because they have not had basically have not done like any exercises to tap in to themselves, so they can't hear their own bodies. uh in this case, what's a good way for someone to start like the relationship with their own bodies, men and women?
Mm. Simplistically, for men and women, like touching your body.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be sexual. Like it's just coming back into like holding yourself and gentle touch. And like sometimes like I also like a little bit like strong touch, and like, like
Ooh.
feeling like that, like protector energy, or like that ferocity too. And yeah, massaging my feet or massaging my legs. So touch is powerful. For women specifically, connecting with your cycle is a revolutionary pathway to self mastery. You cannot tap into
Wow.
your full power as a woman if you are not cultivated and connected to your cycle.
Meaning like know which like stage of your period you're in?
Yes, and just also the cycles of it. Like we're women, all beings are, we're cyclical beings. We're nature. Nature moves day, night, and in these phases of yin and yang. But women specifically, we have these cycles every month of yin and yang. And when we're bleeding, we're at the uttermost yin, meaning what that's like the most, it's the dead of night, it's sleep time, it's slowing all the way down. But in the dead of night is also the connection to the spiritual world, and it's so potent in that time as well. Now I'm going to just come back into like more of like the practical. So like if we're in business and if we're in our everyday life, if we're bleeding and we're not honoring the stage of rest, the stage of yin, the stage of time of refuel, we're burning all of our fire before we even get started. So when we come into the rest of our cycle, that we're at ground zero, we're at rejuvenation, and then as we start to move throughout our cycle, our fire begins to build. So when we hit ovulation, you're in that full fire, that full energy. And then after ovulation, the hormones, the energy begins to slow down as we move into yin. So if you start to sink in with this rhythm, you can build and empower your life from this space. So from a business perspective, like you want to be launching when you're ovulating, when you're
Oh my
in that full
gosh.
power.
I am loving this. I am loving this. I next time I am giving like a TED talk, I make sure it's on the day I ovulate.
Absolutely. Versus
Wow.
like you're trying to push yourself when you have no reserves and no energy. And it's like you're bleeding and you're like, you barely can like show up. And then you end up having all of these imbalances, period pain, PMS, moodiness, and then all like heavy bleeding, and the list goes on. And then what do? We pop some Advil or ibuprofen, and we muscle through it versus
Yeah.
honoring it. And any type of period pain is not normal. You should not be experiencing pain on your period. We've been conditioned that it's normal. It's not. That is a direct message that you're out of balance. And listening to that and using different tools in order to bring your body back into balance. I used to have the most painful periods, and I have zero pain now.
Wow. You have zero pain and zero anxiety from all of the work that you've put in. I don't want to say work even. It's like your lifestyle now. It's
Yeah.
like how you live.
Cultivation. And I do
Yeah.
want to like, I do have moments for sure. But
Yeah.
when
Where
it
you're like
starts to
stressed out.
arrive, yeah. But even with my periods, it's like if my period drops in and I'm doing that day, I'm going to experience pain. And
Mm.
as soon as the pain starts to come, it's an alarming system of like, Simona, slow down. It's time to go and rest. It's time to do your practices. And then as soon as I rest, gone.
Love it. Love it. Gotta honor our bodies and really rest. What did you say before? Fueling up.
Yeah.
We are fueling up by resting.
Fueling up.
Rest is the most productive thing you can do. That's on my phone wallpaper now. That's gonna be on my phone wallpaper. So this was so illuminating. I would like to move to the next segment, which is called
Yeah.
10 Quickies with Dr. Tara. And
Okay.
I'm going to give you a word, and I just want you to give me your first response. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Number 1, sexual energy.
Creation.
Number 2, meditation.
Play.
Number 3, BDSM.
Spicy feminine.
Ooh. Number 4, anal sex.
Delicious.
Number 5, polyamorous relationship.
Oh, I can do a sentence for this?
Yes.
Follow your discernment, know your needs.
Yes. Number 6, dancing.
Freedom.
Number 7, vibrators.
Playful tools, but also not always needed either.
Number 8, sex parties.
Exploration.
Number 9, coconut oil.
Oh, full body, yes. And just like slippery and sensual.
Yes. And last but not least, number 10, what do you think? Missionary sex.
Missionary sex.
What does your body tell you?
One flavor, but also like life is more fun when you explore the rainbow of possibility.
Love it. Love it. That's a great ending. For those of you that are listening, thank you so much for listening till the end of the episode. I will have all of Simona's information in today's show notes so you can reach out to her for more questions. I'm sure you welcome questions about wellness, right? Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Here.
Thank you so much for your time today, for tapping in with me, and it has been an illuminating conversation.
Thank you so much for holding such beautiful space and inviting me in to flow with you.
Love it. My loves, thank you so much again for listening till the end of the episode. If you feel like this episode has been valuable to you, share it with your friends. Tag me on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you so much for being here. Have an orgasmic day.
Welcome to Luvbites. 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 By Dr. Tara, your destination for sexual wellness and mindful relationship advice. Hope you're having an orgasmic